Dave Grohl told Kurt Cobain that songwriting wasn't that difficult. What happened in the next 2 hours on that tour bus changed Dave's understanding of music forever. Winter 1993. Nirvana was somewhere between Denver and Salt Lake City on their In Utero tour. The tour bus smelled like cigarettes, old coffee, and the particular staleness of too many bodies in too small a space for too many days. It was 3 a.m. Most of the crew slept in the back bunks. Chris Novoselic had passed out hours earlier. The bus driver focused on the dark highway ahead, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at the two figures in the front lounge. Dave Grohl sat on one side of the narrow aisle. Kurt Cobain sat on the other, hunched over a notebook, scribbling something, crossing it out, scribbling again. He'd been doing this for over an hour. Dave watched him for a while. At 24, Dave was still processing what his life had become. 3 years earlier, he'd been a nobody drummer in a small band. Now he was in Nirvana, one of the biggest rock bands in the world. He'd gone from basement shows to arena tours, from making no money to suddenly having more than he knew what to do with. But there was something bothering Dave lately, a thought that kept circling in his mind during these long drives. He was just the drummer. Kurt wrote all the songs. Kurt got all the credit. Kurt was the genius, and Dave was beginning to wonder if that was really fair. He was a good drummer. More than good, he knew that. His power and precision were part of what made Nirvana's sound so explosive. But drummers didn't get the same recognition as songwriters. Drummers weren't seen as artists in the public eye. They were support. Dave had been writing songs too, on his own. Nothing he'd shared with the band, but songs nonetheless. He'd record them alone on a 4-track recorder in whatever cheap apartment or hotel room he found himself in. He thought they were good. Some of them were really good. So watching Kurt struggle over that notebook, crossing out line after line, looking frustrated and tired, Dave felt something he wasn't proud of. A small surge of resentment mixed with confidence, maybe even a touch of arrogance. "You've been working on that for an hour," Dave said, breaking the silence. Kurt looked up. His eyes were tired. He'd been battling stomach pain again. Probably hadn't slept properly in days. "Yeah," Kurt said simply. "New song?" "Trying to be." Dave leaned back in his seat. The bus swayed slightly as it took a curve. Outside, darkness and occasional highway lights. "Can I say something without you getting mad?" Dave asked. Kurt set down his pen. "That's never a good way to start a sentence." "I've been thinking," Dave continued anyway, "about songwriting, about how much you struggle with it sometimes." "Okay. And I guess I don't really understand why it's so hard." Dave said it casually, but there was an edge underneath. "I mean, you just write what you feel, right? Put some chords together, write some lyrics. It's not like it's math or something." Kurt didn't respond immediately. He looked at Dave with an expression that was hard to read. Not angry, not defensive, just studying him. "You think songwriting is easy?" Kurt asked quietly. "I think maybe we make it harder than it needs to be," Dave said. "I've been writing my own stuff, demo recordings, and honestly, it just kind of flows out. I don't sit there crossing out lines for an hour." There was a long pause. The bus engine hummed. The driver shifted gears. "You write songs," Kurt said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah, just for myself. Nothing serious." "But you think you could do what I do?" Dave shrugged, trying to seem casual even though his heart was beating faster. This conversation had gone somewhere he hadn't quite intended. "I think I could write songs that people would connect with, yeah. I don't think it's some mysterious gift. It's just work." Kurt looked down at his notebook. Then he tore out a page, crumpled it up, and tossed it in the small trash bin next to his seat. "All right," Kurt said. "All right, what?" "I've got a song I've been working on. Half finished. Can't figure out the second verse or the bridge." Kurt pulled out a different notebook from his bag, flipped through some pages, and found what he was looking for. "You think songwriting isn't that hard? Finish this." He handed the notebook to Dave. Dave took it, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was what he wanted, wasn't it? A chance to prove himself, to show that he wasn't just the drummer. The page had lyrics written in Kurt's distinctive handwriting. Messy, hurried, some words scratched out and rewritten. The page had lyrics written in Kurt's distinctive handwriting. Messy, hurried, some words scratched out and rewritten. At the top, you know you're right. The first verse was there, fragmentary but powerful. I will never bother you, I will never promise to. I will never follow you, I will never bother you. And then the chorus, you know you're right. The second verse was incomplete, just a few scattered lines that didn't connect. The bridge was completely blank except for the word pain, written and circled multiple times. 2 hours, Kurt said. We'll be at the next rest stop in 2 hours. If you finish it before then, you can keep the song. Record it yourself if you want. If you can't finish it, you just have to admit that maybe songwriting is a little harder than you thought. Dave looked at the page. His confidence remained, but now mixed with the reality of actually having to do the thing he'd claimed was easy. Deal, Dave said. Kurt leaned back in his seat, closed his eyes. I'm going to try to sleep. Let me know when you're done. Dave stared at the page. The first verse had a rhythm to it, a repetition that felt hypnotic, like someone trying to convince themselves of something they desperately wanted to believe. I will never bother you. I will never promise to. I will never follow you. I will never bother you. The chorus was just 3 words. You know you're right. But somehow in Kurt's handwriting, those words carried weight. They felt loaded with meaning, resignation, defeat, acceptance of someone else's judgment. The second verse was incomplete, just a few scattered lines that didn't connect. The bridge was blank except for pain circled multiple times. 2 hours, Kurt said. We'll be at the next rest stop in 2 hours. If you finish it before then, you can keep the song. Record it yourself if you want. If you can't finish it, you just have to admit that maybe songwriting is a little harder than you thought. Deal, Dave said. Kurt leaned back in his seat, closed his eyes. I'm going to try to sleep. Let me know when you're done. Dave picked up the pen. He needed to write a second verse that matched the energy of the first. That continued the narrative. That felt like Kurt. He wrote, I will never speak to you. I will never see you again. He crossed it out. Too literal. Too obvious. He tried again. I will never talk of you. I will never want to crossed out. Didn't have the same internal rhythm as the first verse. The bus continued through the darkness. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Dave kept writing and crossing out. He tried different approaches, different word choices. Nothing felt right. Nothing captured whatever that first verse had captured. The problem wasn't finding words. Dave could find words. The problem was finding the right words. Words that fit the emotional space Kurt had created. Words that felt true rather than just clever. 40 minutes in, Dave realized he was sweating despite the cool temperature on the bus. He glanced at Kurt, who appeared to be asleep, or maybe just resting with his eyes closed. It was hard to tell. Dave looked back at the page. He'd filled half a page with scratched-out attempts. None of them worked. He tried to think about what the song was about. Someone trying to create distance. Someone making promises about what they'll never do. Maybe because they've done all those things before and it ended badly. Someone accepting another person's judgment of them. Was it about a relationship? Probably. But which kind? Romantic? Friendship? The relationship between an artist and their audience? That was the thing about Kurt's lyrics. They worked on multiple levels. They could be about one thing on the surface and 3 other things underneath. Dave tried to write something that worked on multiple levels. It came out pretentious and try-hard. An hour passed. Dave had gone through 5 pages of attempts. The notebook was now full of his scribbled handwriting, lines crossed out, arrows connecting different phrases, question marks everywhere. Nothing worked. He tried to match Kurt's rhythm, but rhythm wasn't enough. He tried to match the emotional tone, but he couldn't quite identify what that tone was. Sadness, anger, numbness, all 3? Dave felt frustration building. This wasn't supposed to be this hard. He'd written plenty of songs. Good songs. Songs that had structure and melody and meaning. But this was different. This wasn't starting from scratch. This was stepping into someone else's emotional world and trying to continue their thought without breaking the spell. Kurt stirred in his seat but didn't open his eyes. Dave looked at the bridge section. Pain circled multiple times. What did that mean? Was Kurt supposed to sing about pain directly? Or was pain just a note to himself about the feeling he wanted to evoke? Dave tried writing a bridge. All this pain inside I can't hide. Immediately, he knew it was wrong. Too direct. Too simple. Kurt never wrote that, obviously. He crossed it out. An hour and a half in, Dave set down the pen. His hand was cramping. His head hurt. The page in front of him was a mess of black ink and frustration. He hadn't finished the second verse. He hadn't written the bridge. He'd produced nothing but failed attempts. The bus was slowing. They were approaching a rest stop. Kurt opened his eyes, sat up slowly. "How's it going?" Kurt asked. Dave looked at the page, at all his crossed-out attempts. "I can't do it," Dave said quietly. Kurt didn't say, "I told you so." He just nodded. "Can I show you something?" Kurt asked. "Yeah." The bus pulled into the rest stop. The driver announced 15 minutes. Crew stirred in the back. Kurt grabbed his acoustic guitar, sat back down. He took the notebook and looked at the original page. Then he started playing. Simple chords, but the rhythm, the way he let notes ring while dampening others, created something both aggressive and fragile. He sang the first verse, voice raw at 3 a.m., but unmistakable. "I will never bother you. I will never promise to. I will never follow you. I will never bother you." Then the second verse, "Never speak a word again. I will crawl away for good. I will move away from here. You won't be afraid of fear." Dave listened. The verse maintained rhythm but shifted meaning, from establishing distance to complete disappearance. That last line didn't make logical sense, but felt exactly right. Then the bridge. Kurt's voice strained, desperate. Pain, 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 just the word. Repeated, not explained, just stated flatly when everything else was exhausted. Back to the chorus. "You know you're right, 2.5 minutes." Kurt set down the guitar. "You want to know why you couldn't finish it?" Kurt asked. Dave nodded. "Because you were trying to write like me. Get inside my head. Think like me. Feel like me." Kurt's voice wasn't unkind. "But you can't because you're not me. You haven't lived what I've lived." "But millions of people connect with your songs," Dave said. "How do they all relate if it's just personal?" "They relate to the feeling underneath. The specifics are mine. The feeling is universal. But you start with something real, something that costs you." Kurt picked up the notebook, looked at Dave's crossed-out attempts. "These aren't bad lines. Some are good, but they're not true. Not for this song. Maybe they're true for a song you need to write." Dave felt something shift. Recognition. "That bridge," Dave said. "Just pain 3 times. I thought that was too simple." "Because you're thinking about songwriting as technical. Like there are rules. Like you can't just say pain because it's too simple. But sometimes that's all there is. You can't make it prettier. It's just pain." The bus driver called 5 minutes. "Can I ask you something?" Dave said. "Sure." "Do you ever write songs that don't come from somewhere real?" Kurt thought. "Sometimes I start with a riff, but to finish it, to make it mean something, I have to find the truth in it, even if it's uncomfortable." Silence. "I have been writing songs," Dave said. "Like I told you. Some are good, but I've been writing to prove I can. To prove I'm more than just a drummer. Not because I have something I need to say." Kurt nodded. "Yeah, I could tell." "How?" "Because if you had something you needed to say, you wouldn't have told me songwriting was easy. You'd know how hard it is to find words for things that matter." Everyone climbed back on. Soon they were rolling towards Salt Lake City. "Can I tell you something?" Kurt said. "Of course. You're an incredible drummer. Really incredible. The power you bring, the way you instinctively know when to hit hard and when to pull back, that can't be taught. That's a gift." Dave looked surprised. "I mean it," Kurt continued. "I've played with a lot of drummers. You're different. You don't just keep time. You understand what the song needs. You make them better." "Thanks," Dave said quietly. "But you're trying to be me. Trying to prove you can write like I write. You should be writing like Dave Grohl writes, whatever that means." "I don't know what that sounds like yet." "Then figure it out. Stop trying to prove you're not just a drummer. Be yourself who happens to play drums and also writes. Be yourself." Dave nodded slowly. "That song," Dave said. "You know you're right. When are you going to record it?" I don't know, maybe never. You should. It's too good not to. Kurt shrugged. Maybe. They did record You Know You're Right in early 1994 during Nirvana's last session. After Kurt's death, when Dave heard the final version, he thought back to that night. The night Kurt challenged him and he failed. But more importantly, what Kurt said about finding his own voice, about writing from truth. Years later, when Foo Fighters became successful and Dave was the frontman, journalists asked where he learned songwriting. He usually gave vague answers. But in a 2002 interview, late at night after a show, when asked who taught him songwriting, Dave told the truth. Kurt did, Dave said, but not how you'd think. He didn't teach me by showing me how. He taught me by showing me how hard it is. And he taught me I needed my own reasons for writing, not copy his. The journalist asked what he meant. There was this night on tour, Dave said. Kurt challenged me to finish one of his songs. He bet I couldn't. He was right, not because I didn't know music theory, but because I was trying to be him, write from his pain. And you can't do that. You can only write from your own. Did that make you angry? No, Dave said. It freed me. I realized I didn't have to be Kurt Cobain. I just had to figure out what I had to say. That's what he gave me. Permission to be myself. When Dave heard You Know You're Right after Kurt's death, released in 2002, he listened to that bridge. Pain repeated 3 times. And he understood why he couldn't have written it. It wasn't his pain. It was Kurt's. And Kurt was the only one who could name it. The lesson wasn't about songwriting technique. It was about artistic truth, about the difference between writing songs and writing your truth, about the impossibility of inhabiting someone else's emotional reality. Kurt didn't make Dave feel like a failure that night. He made Dave realize he had his own story to tell. Dave Grohl told Kurt Cobain that songwriting wasn't that difficult. Kurt handed him a half-finished song and said, "Finish it." Dave couldn't. Not because he wasn't talented, but because the song wasn't his to finish. And in failing to finish that song, Dave learned the most important lesson of his career. That authenticity can't be faked. That truth is the only thing that makes art matter. That finding your own voice means accepting you'll never sound like anyone else. That's what Kurt taught Dave that night. Not how to write songs, but why to write them.